Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a question that, well, it's puzzled observers for a long time.
Yeah.
Why do some nations seem to thrive, achieve incredible prosperity, while others grapple with really profound challenges?
Especially when those nations are, blessed with abundant resources. It seems counterintuitive sometimes.
Exactly. It's a fundamental question, really, about global development, about human society.
And for this deep dive, we're turning to a really fascinating collection of reflections. They're from 2010 by an author named Murad Agha.
Okay.
And he offers this very candid, sometimes quite poetic, but also sharply critical commentary on the Arab world. He often compares it to what he calls first world countries.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack the most significant insights from Agha's observations. We want to help you understand the underlying reasons he suggests for things like societal conditions, economic gaps, cultural dynamics, all through his specific viewpoint.
We're looking for those kind of aha moments, the things that connect maybe historical context with the challenges people were seeing then and perhaps still see today.
Okay, let's get started then. Where does he begin?
Well, to set the scene, Agha vividly describes the global economic crisis back in 2010. He calls it a tsunami.
A tsunami, wow.
Yeah, one that he says impacted everyone, the powerful and the infant in the cradle, big and small. Basically, nobody was untouched by the ripple effects.
And what's really striking, I thought, was his observation that even in countries we typically call first world Europe, American people were actually queuing for aid.
Exactly. He draws a direct parallel. He says it looked like scenes you might see in some Arab nations during cooperative charity days with people lining up for basic stuff.
He gives examples, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
Sure.
Pretty specific ones. Approximately 1 million people in Spain alone were in these aid queues.
1 million in Spain.
Yeah. And he mentions over 2 million French citizens left France over a 10-year period. And get this, 70,000 Irish people left in just 1 year.
Out of a population of, 4.5 million?
Something like that, yeah, 4.5 million. So it really shows the scale of the economic strain, even in those countries.
But then Agha points out a really stark difference, doesn't he?
He does. While those quote-unquote first world nations were facing economic hardship, he notes that people in many Arab nations were often dealing with, severe health issues on top of poverty.
Things like?
He lists things like liver, lung, anemia, and kidney failure. And he stresses that healthcare there is incredibly expensive. You have to, in his words, pay for bandages, needles, and thread. Basic supplies.
So focus on just fundamental survival and care, really.
Right. And this leads him to another pretty critical observation about migration policies.
Huh?
He notes that these first world countries, even struggling themselves, they still open their doors for migrants from other struggling first world nations.
But close them to Arab migrants.
Largely, yes. That's the contrast he draws.
He also mentions a sort of practical side to the migration that did happen, right? Like language skills.
Yeah, absolutely. He observes that, for instance, Irish people's English skills made it easier for them to move to places like the U.S., Canada, Australia, former British colonies.
Makes sense.
And similarly, Spanish speakers found it easier to head to South America. So even in a global crisis, things like language could open or close doors.
Okay, so that sets the scene with the 2010 crisis. But then the sources dig deeper into this whole first world versus third world label.
Yes, and it's a really provocative core question he poses. Why these labels? Why are Western nations called first world and Arab nations third world?
And Agha's argument isn't just about economics, is it?
No, not at all. He argues the difference lies in this profound gap between appearance and essence, between content and superficiality, and maybe most importantly, between theory and application.
So it's deeper, more systemic? How does he characterize each?
Well, he describes the first world with terms like transparency, clarity, prosperity, and brotherhood, a place where basics like water, food, and medicine are available. But crucially, he says that in these places, mental energy, human intellect, creativity, it's used directly and honestly.
Meaning?
It suggests a system where intelligence is channeled openly towards constructive things, not hidden agendas.
And the contrast with the third world, in his view.
Stark contrast. He says it's marked by vast differences between word and deed, places where, in his words, lying, hypocrisy, and corrupt earning prevail.
That's quite blunt.
It is. He emphasizes that intelligence in these societies often gets tangled up in what he calls jungles of corruption and enslavement, operating on that principle, if you are not a wolf, the wolves will eat you.
A survival mentality almost.
Exactly. And he uses this really memorable, almost physical analogy to try and simplify it. He says the difference can be as simple as the thickness of a wall.
The thickness of a wall. How so?
He compares the cleanliness and order inside private homes
Right.
versus piles of garbage you might see in the public streets. It symbolizes this disconnect between the private sphere and the shared public environment.
That's a powerful image. Now, Aga then takes us on this surprising historical detour, doesn't he? Back to a golden age.
Yes, and it's fascinating because it offers such a contrast to the challenges he's discussing. He highlights this period where non-Arabic speaking peoples produced these absolutely brilliant scholars
Who mastered Arabic.
master Arabic and contributed massively to global knowledge. He gives examples like al-Bukhari from Uzbekistan.
Al-Bukhari, known for the Hadith collections, right?
Precisely. His collection of prophetic hadith, the sayings and actions of Prophet Muhammad, is considered, second only to the Quran in stature and accuracy in the Islamic world. A huge figure.
And Aga emphasizes the effort involved.
Oh, absolutely. He details these incredibly arduous journeys al-Bukhari undertook just to verify the accounts, traveling on foot or on the backs of camels and horses, facing bandits, extreme weather, illness. It was a monumental undertaking, driven purely by dedication.
Wow. And wasn't there another key figure mentioned? Al-Khwarizmi.
Yes, al-Khwarizmi from Khwarezm. Aga credits him as basically the founder of Arab mathematics. His innovations were fundamental.
Like algebra.
Algebra, logarithms, the concept of zero, the numerals we use, Indian and Arabic numerals, even the astrolabe, that crucial astronomical tool.
And the sources point out his work came long before Einstein.
Right. Aga highlights that al-Khwarizmi's work preceded Einstein's theory of relativity by about 13 centuries. It just shows the incredible scientific foresight of that era.
13 centuries. It's staggering when you think about it.
It really is. And the author uses this contrast, these massive achievements, done without any modern comforts, no computers, no easy travel, just pure dedication. He uses it to ask a critical question.
Which is?
Basically, what can this golden age teach the Arab world today about the path forward?
And his answer connects back to that idea of essence versus appearance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He links this historical excellence to the idea that real progress, real civilization, comes from a sincere belief that truth, transparency, and the unity of outer appearance with inner essence are what's needed.
That's what will enable the Arab world, in his view, to emerge from the realm of doubt and suspicion. So internal integrity is the foundation.
That seems to be his point. And building on that, the sources introduce this analogy. It's about finding a hidden treasure.
Okay, a hidden treasure.
And what you do with it. He immediately applies this to the Arab world's own immense, often untapped wealth.
Right. He details the resources, doesn't he?
He does, the most abundant global riches. He talks about the strategic location, but also natural resources, everything from solar energy to what he calls velvet nature.
Velvet nature. What do you think he means by that?
I interpret it as maybe the region's beautiful, perhaps sometimes fragile landscapes and climate, alongside the obvious mineral wealth, oil, phosphate, iron, uranium, tin, aluminum, gold, silver. I mean, the list goes on.
It really sounds like an embarrassment of riches, a truly gifted region.
It does, but then the author makes, a very controversial claim. He talks about a Frankish attack.
Frankish meaning Western.
Yes, Western intervention specifically after what he calls the Great Arab Revolt, that uprising against Ottoman rule early in the 20th century.
And he claims this intervention divided the Arab nation.
He asserts it divided them into a docile, affectionate, and obedient nation through plans designed, in his words, to hide ruin. It's a strong accusation of manipulation.
And he draws another stark comparison, this time, regarding aid.
Yes, comparing the aid Palestinians received after the 1948 and 1967 displacements with the aid Jewish people received after World War II.
And he finds the comparison unfair.
He argues it's never fair, especially considering what he frames as the loss of holy sites like Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and the Ibrahimi Mosque, plus the displacement of, he claims, more than 15 million Arabs. It's a very pointed critique from his perspective.
He also expresses concern about where the wealth ends up, right? Oil revenues and such.
Right. He highlights his concern that Arab oil money and funds from corruption often flow out of the region and into Frankish lands, meaning Western countries. through things like bank accounts, real estate, and financial assets. He sees it as this continuous drain of wealth.
And what's particularly striking, I think, is his argument about a simultaneous process happening.
Yes, he argues that while this financial and spiritual drain is happening in Arab nations, the swallowing of holy sites and spiritualities, as he puts it, Israel is being transformed by force, miracle, and magic into a religious state.
While Arab nations.
While Arab nations, he argues, are being stripped of laws and religions under banners like modernity and globalization.
Mm-hmm.
He's painting this picture of, well, perceived double standards and a targeted erosion.
That's a powerful and deeply critical observation he's making there.
It is, and it leads directly into what the author terms the irony of internal division.
The divisions within the Arab world itself.
Exactly. He notes that while you see other nations or blocs uniting globally, Arab nations are, in his view, actually increasing separation and division, turning their lands into fragments and ruin.
Does he give specific examples around 2010?
Yes, he focuses heavily on the impending division of Sudan into North and South. He calls this the biggest disaster looming for Arab nations at that time.
Why such strong terms?
He warns it could end Sudan's role as the potential breadbasket of the Arab world, leading to higher food prices for everyday staples like beans, falafel, tomatoes, and molokia, that green leafy vegetable, things that affect daily life.
The impact on ordinary people.
Precisely. And he also mentions past conflicts, Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon. He acknowledges they're often blamed on external conspiracies, but he argues quite forcefully that the internal will is asleep.
Suggesting a degree of self-inflicted problems.
That's the implication. He even points to the potential for more division in Sudan, specifically mentioning Darfur because of its oil and uranium wealth, like a resource curse-feeding fragmentation.
And this leads to one of his most, well, pointed self-critiques, doesn't it?
It really does. This is where it gets quite harsh. He asserts that Arabs, in his view, specialize in the hobby of division, fragmentation, dispute, pruning, gnawing. The list goes on.
Planting wicked sleeves, enduring frictions, straight stakes, and abiding minds. Wow, a hobby.
It's incredibly stark language. It suggests this isn't just circumstance, but an ingrained pattern, a deeply problematic cultural tendency as he sees it.
That self-critique feeds right into his take on the WikiLeaks stuff then.
Directly. He talks about Julian Assange being released on bail, and Assange explicitly stating he'd prefer refuge in Britain. Why?
Because of its transparency and integrity and justice.
Right.
Compared
to his fear of Arab intelligence agencies, Agha really highlights this point.
And Assange wouldn't even create an Arab Leaks page.
No. Agha notes Assange cited concerns that Arab intelligence would simply arrest and torture him. He even chose London over Qatar for an interview because he wanted sufficient guarantees he could leave safely.
That says a lot about the perceived climate for whistleblowers or dissent in the region at that time.
It really does. Though, interestingly, Agha mentions that a Lebanese newspaper, Al Akhbar, did publish the Arab cables when most others refused.
Why Lebanon, according to Agha?
He attributes it to Lebanon's kind of unique micro-democracies despite its technical vulnerabilities. Maybe suggesting a pocket of relative freedom, or perhaps just a different political dynamic.
But here's a fascinating part Agha claims.
Yeah.
The content of those leaks didn't really shock the Arab public.
Exactly. He states that most of what is published is not strange or new to the Arab mentality. Like many secrets are already known and swallowed.
Known and swallowed. That suggests a deep level of what? Cynicism? Or just awareness?
Perhaps both. Agha elaborates, saying that in his view, Arab governments collect info on their own people, on their neighbors, mainly for bargaining or planting stakes, political maneuvering.
As opposed to?
He contrasts this sharply with Western governments, which he suggests ultimately serve their people. It's a fundamental difference in the purpose of governance that he's highlighting.
Okay, this connects to another really harsh reality outlined in this source, the imbalance he perceives in the value placed on human life.
Yes, this is a tough section. While we universally say life is priceless, Agha states that in Arab nations, its relative and hypothetical value can sometimes seem like zero, or, as he starkly puts it, equivalent to a plate of falafel.
That's brutal. How does he illustrate such a challenging point?
He gives some really striking examples from around that time. He contrasts the global response to the Carmel fire in Israel plains came from Australia, the U.S., even some Arab countries helped out.
Right, I remember that.
He contrasts that with what he describes as minimal aid for simultaneous fires just 200 kilometers away in northern Lebanon. He says they were largely ignored by the same Arab fire brigades that had just helped Israel.
He questions why, for example, a U.S. firefighting plane didn't drop water on Lebanon.
Exactly, he asks that pointed question. Then there's another example, shark attacks in the Red Sea.
Okay.
He points out that when a German tourist died, resorts were closed, there were intense searches for the sharks, massive response. But Aga notes, when hundreds of pilgrims drowned tragically in the same sea, there was minimal or no compensation for their families, much less public outcry or action.
A huge disparity in reaction.
A huge disparity. And one more, the costly operations, sometimes involving paying millions to kidnappers to rescue foreign tourists taken hostage in places like the Egypt-Sudan-Libya border area or Mauritania-Mali.
Compared to the value placed on local lives.
So that's the implication. It leads Aga to ask this really painful question. Is the Arab individual oppressed, miserable, and drugged compared to Europeans, Americans, Australians, Japanese? It's a deeply thought-provoking, uncomfortable inquiry.
And he argues that acknowledging weakness isn't the issue.
No, he says acknowledging weakness isn't shameful, but embracing it as a profession through things like disunity and constantly begging for strength from others, that is shameful in his view.
And he points out that non-Arabs often seem to be the ones organizing aid.
Yeah, he mentions figures like George Galloway, Erdogan, Ahmadinejad, Chavez organizing aid convoys for Arabs, while Arabs themselves, he suggests, sometimes just remain onlookers.
So this brings us back to his central critique then, this culture of division and hypocrisy.
It really ties it all together. He repeats his view that Arab societies tend to turn defeats into victories, turn holy sites into brothels and taverns, and maybe worst of all, lash out at fellow Arabs who actually try to stand up or make a difference.
And he makes a distinction about the direction of hypocrisy.
Yes, he says Arab hypocrisy is directed exclusively for local and Arab consumption. It's internal, whereas Western or Israeli hypocrisy, he suggests, is mainly directed only for external consumption, implying the Arab version is more self-destructive.
And even when things are revealed, like through WikiLeaks, Aga thinks it doesn't really change much internally.
He seems quite pessimistic on that front. He posits that these revelations don't fundamentally change the Arab individual's view of their reality. Instead, he believes they just increase sadness, frustration, and isolation.
A sense of powerlessness, maybe?
Perhaps. He summarizes this whole trajectory as a profound historical shift, from being conquerors and liberators in that golden age he mentioned,
To becoming,
in his stark assessment, barefoot and conquered, bound and led like sheep.
So wrapping it all up, what does Aga think is the absolute root cause?
He suggests the fundamental issue lies in a kind of unique psychology. He calls it a velvet Arab mentality and psychology with a secret and magical blend that has, frankly, perplexed outsiders. It's something deep-seated, cultural, psychological, that he believes holds the key.
Wow. Well, we've certainly navigated a complex landscape today, unpacking Murad Aga's 2010 perspectives on economic challenges, those nuanced definitions of first and third worlds, that proud history versus present struggles, and the impact of, well, both external forces and these internal divisions he highlights.
Yeah, it's clear from these sources, at least through his eyes, that many of the challenges are seen as deeply rooted. A mix of history, strategic issues, but also, critically, these internal societal dynamics.
He definitely doesn't shy away from self-critique.
Not at all. And he leaves us with this really stark, almost absurd, final, provocative thought. He asks, if two Arabs were to land on Mars,
On Mars, okay.
would they unite and understand each other? Or would they immediately start to fight, bash, and bombard each other with all they possess?
That's quite the image. It really challenges you to think beyond just external factors, doesn't it? About the profound impact of internal unity, or the lack of it, on a people's destiny.
Absolutely. So after hearing all this, the question back to you, our listener, is, what stands out to you from this deep dive into Murad Aga's reflections?